Escape from Hamas. Reporting from New York, here's Bill Hemmer.
Good evening, I'm Bill Hemmer, and this is a Fox News exclusive, Escape from Hamas. Once again, Middle East violence dominates the news. A murderous rain of missiles on Israeli cities, launched by the terrorist organization Hamas. Israeli defense forces pounding the Gaza Strip in retaliation. Streets full of fanatical demonstrators, many of them young men committed to killing in the name of God. This hour, we bring you a story of a young man, the son of a top Hamas leader who once led similar street protests. But his story ends in a way you will not expect. He says that after a long journey through darkness, he finally saw the light. As you're about to hear, that young man now has a lot to say, some things that will shock and offend many people. This Fox News investigation goes deep into the very heart of Hamas itself and inside one of Israel's highest security prisons, where Hamas also flourishes. And in the end, we will take you to a quiet Christian haven here at home in the United States. But this story begins in the crucible of contending religions in the old city of Jerusalem. Here's Fox News' Jonathan Hunt.
Millions of people have come to Jerusalem and found their lives changed. Muslims, Jews, Christians, even atheists have been deeply affected by the sights, sounds and history of this, the cradle of three of the great religions. For one young Palestinian man named Mosab Hassan, the change wrought by Jerusalem was different, even more profound and disturbing. He had grown up in the West Bank. His father, Sheikh Hassan Yousef, was a founder of Hamas, the radical Islamic group that now controls the Palestinian territories and which was founded with the aim of destroying Israel. And Mosab Hassan himself was a leader of the Islamic Youth Movement, an equally radical group. He personally fought Israeli tanks and troops on the streets of Ramallah. He was seen as a future leader of radical Palestinians. But a chance meeting right here at this spot would radically alter everything Mosab Hassan believed in. This is one of the entrances to Jerusalem's Old City, home to some of the holiest places in the world. Among them, the Temple Mount and its Western Wall for Jews, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre for Christians, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock for Muslims. Mosab Hassan's chance encounter with a Christian tourist not only ripped apart his deeply held belief in the Muslim faith, it would also change forever his life and the lives of his family. Mosab Hassan believes with all his heart that that chance meeting might also very well change the world. And his denunciations of Islam are harsh and startling.
Every Muslim who read the Quran, if they allow themselves to listen to this Quran and believe in the same time that this is from God, I think they are sick and they need help.
Mosab Hassan says he got that kind of help and his life has indeed changed.
Thank you, Lord.
And like so many others around the world who converted to Christianity, Mosab Hassan says all it took to set him on his journey was one reading of the Bible.
I loved Jesus immediately.
Why?
Love your enemy. That was the one that moved me from deep and changed my life forever. I've been suffering for a long time. It's like my medicine became. It's not a drug. It's not given. It's not like Quran. Quran is a drug.
The Quran is a drug, you say?
Islam is a drug.
Incendiary words from a young man on a mission. But Mosab Hassan believes his story can change the lives of millions of Muslims, whose faith he feels is also in crisis.
I believe that Islam is collapsing already.
Because it's collapsing?
It is collapsing. It looks from the outside, it's growing, but from the inside, it's completely collapsing. It's not giving answers to the people. It's not improving their lives. It's not helping them at all. Within 10 years, that's it. Islam's going to be over.
So how did this faithful son become so disillusioned with everything the powerful father he loved and admired brought him up to believe in? What led him to become so disgusted with Hamas, the movement his father helped to found, that he now repeatedly and bitterly denounces it? How did he lose faith in radical Islam and turn instead to evangelical Christianity? And how does he plan to persuade millions of Muslims to abandon their faith, a faith he says is misguided, or as he now puts it, is nothing more than a drug? And how did he escape the hell of the Middle East conflict and end up in a place many consider paradise on earth? Mosab Hassan's journey from the west bank of the Jordan River to the west coast of America, from the crucible of radical Islam to the heart of the Christian faith, when we return.
Welcome back to Escape from Hamas. As you have seen, Mosab Hassan was born into the top tier of Hamas leadership. So what did that mean when he was growing up? Once again, Jonathan Hunt.
Mosab Hassan is building a new life in Southern California. It could hardly be more different to the life he was born into. Poverty, violence and death on a daily basis made the west bank of the Jordan River one of the toughest places in the world to grow up at the height of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But for Mosab Hassan, it was simply home, the only home he knew.
I didn't leave the West Bank till I was 20 years old.
And he can't forget the streets he walked as a child.
My best place is my town. I love my town.
Ramallah.
Ramallah.
You'll go back there?
Hopefully soon.
The memories he cherishes the most are of the games he played as a young boy.
Like running outside in the nature, playing soccer.
You had a soccer ball?
Yeah, I had a soccer ball. And
where did you play?
My favorite spot was the cemetery, actually.
You played soccer in the cemetery?
In a cemetery.
This is that cemetery here in the heart of Ramallah, next to Mosab's old home. As you can see from the thousands of headstones here, what was once a largely empty space is now filled, and many of these tombs contain the bodies of Palestinian fighters. It was December 1987. The first intifada or uprising began. Palestinians took to the streets, fighting running battles with Israeli tanks and troops. Mosab Hassan was 10 years old. The first intifada breaks out and everything changes.
Definitely. Everything's changed, but still, like, you believe this is your destiny. This is your life and you have to deal with it.
But do all the kids go from playing soccer in the cemetery to throwing stones at Israeli tanks?
We did both.
That became a part of life for you, confrontation with Israeli soldiers?
Of course. That was like part of my life.
And the Ramallah cemetery, site of so many impromptu soccer games, was now the scene of chaotic and impassioned burials.
My house was next to this cemetery, and every day of the first intifada, for 4 years I was living there, I used to see dead bodies coming every day.
You were 10 years old and seeing dead bodies?
I was 10 years old, yeah.
But even before the Intifada, Mosab Hassan's view of Israel and of Islam had been shaped by his father, Sheikh Hassan Yousef, a founding figure of Hamas, the radical movement which was founded with two overriding goals: to destroy Israel and to build a hardline Islamic state in its place. What's your first memory of your father actually educating you in his beliefs?
My father had no time to sit down and teach me, but he used to take me with him everywhere he goes, to villages, refugee camps, cities, everywhere, preaching almost every day, several times. So I was hearing him like preaching every time.
Did you hear him talking about Israel as an enemy at a young age?
About Israelis as occupation force, as enemies of Palestinians, enemies of Muslims, of course.
So you grew up in a spiritually and politically very active family.
Oh yeah, definitely, no doubt.
Mosab, like most 10-year-olds, worshipped his father.
He's the best. He's doing everything for his own people.
But as the Intifada intensified, the Israelis came for Sheikh Hassan Yousef.
The Israeli soldiers knocked our door, and they came into the house, asked, saw my father, asked for his name, and he said his name. That's it. They took him. They told us we're going to return him after 5 minutes.
When did they return him?
A year and a half later.
Mosab Hassan claims that his father was never directly involved in any acts of terror.
I know for sure that he doesn't have direct participating in this process, but he has indirect by praising suicide bombers.
Through a series of interviews, I pressed Mosab Hassan on that claim. How can you convince someone that your father, again, as a leader of Hamas for many years, never signed off on a single suicide bombing, never had knowledge that a particular bomber was heading to Jerusalem or Tel Aviv at any particular time?
I'm not saying that he's not responsible, by the way. I think everybody sits there and prays a suicide bomber is partner in this process. Because I know him on the personal level. He's not willing to carry explosive belt and go kill other people. I know this about him as a person.
But is he able to send others to kill?
He never sent somebody, not because he didn't want this to happen. Because the Hamas movement works in a very intelligent way. Political wing, military wing, security wing. So my father, for his position as a well-known leader and other Hamas leaders, they don't interfere with the military wing.
Could that really be true? I didn't want to take just Mosab Hassan's word for it, but I couldn't ask his father directly because Sheikh Hassan Yousef is still in an Israeli prison and the authorities would not allow us to talk to him. Mosab's other family members refused our interview requests, so I turned to Avi Issacharoff, an Israeli journalist and author who specializes in covering Hamas and has known Sheikh Hassan Yousef for more than a decade. So when his son, Mosab, says, my father had no direct involvement in the planning or carrying out of any suicide attacks, you believe that?
Yes, I do believe him. The Israeli army, the Israeli intelligence, in each and every chance that they had to accuse someone of being involved in any kind of a murder, they would have gone and done it against Hamas officials, of course. They didn't do it this time. The only accusation that they have against him is being a member or being a leader of Hamas.
What, though, about Hamas's sort of collective responsibility?
At the end, he was in one line with all the other Hamas's leaders, maybe because he didn't have any other option, but this is what he did. So I think that he has some responsibility for that, or maybe you can say moral responsibility.
But in that phrase that is often used here, you would say that he does not have blood on his hands, or he does have blood on his hands?
I would say that he doesn't have any blood on his hands.
But for Israel, Mosab Hassan's father was a marked man because he advocated and celebrated terrorism. Over the next decade, Sheikh Hassan Yousef would be arrested at least 16 times, spending more time in Israeli jails than he did here at home in Ramallah. Mosab, meanwhile, was following in his father's footsteps, joining the Islamic youth movement and quickly rising to become a leader of that militant organization. And when Hamas began one of the most deadly wave of bombings Israel has ever seen, Israeli authorities thought Mosab Hassan might have blood on his hands. That's next.
A son's admiration for his father is a powerful bond, a reason so many young men choose to follow in their father's footsteps. But Mosab Hassan would have that admiration sorely tested. The moment came in prison where Hassan says he started to see his father's organization, Hamas, in a much different light and envisioned for himself a much different path. Jonathan Hunt's investigation continues.
I loved Hamas because I loved my father. Your father is everything for you as a child. He's not only a leader or like he's your world. And you think that he's the best, he's the strongest, he's your king, he's your God, basically. So I loved him and I loved the ideas that, and his beliefs.
That reverence for his father, Sheikh Hassan Yousef, one of the founders of Hamas, led Mosab Hassan toward the West Bank's more radical groups.
For my father's position, I became the president of the Islamic student movement.
You weren't just anybody in the Islamic youth movement in the West Bank, you were yourself a leader of the Islamic youth movement.
Yeah, of course, of course.
And the heir apparent to your father.
Yeah, we recruit many people, just talking to them about God. Then they are ready to be recruited for Hamas movement.
Was the student Islamic movement in the West Bank a radical Islamic movement?
It leads to Hamas. It's one of Hamas' wings.
So it is radical?
It is, of course.
It condones terror?
They praise terrorists.
When pressed in a later interview, Mosab Hassan denied actually engaging in terrorist acts.
You never had knowledge of any bombings being planned? Even though you were president of the Islamic youth movement and your father was a founder of Hamas?
Yeah, this is not because I didn't want. This is not because I didn't want. The Hamas military wing, they didn't want me to get involved in this type of resistance because of security reasons.
So you supported it? You supported suicide attacks?
Definitely, definitely. I told you, I used to celebrate. When there is an attack in Israel, I used to celebrate.
And in praising suicide bombers, as president of the Islamic youth movement, do you believe you inspired other young men to become suicide bombers?
Maybe. In indirect way. I don't know. Maybe.
Do you believe that in any way at all you personally have blood on your hands?
Indirect way, definitely not. But maybe like indirect ways, probably.
On September 13, 1993, Yasser Arafat stood alongside Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and President Clinton to sign the Oslo peace accords. Hamas wanted no part of it, and as the peace process moved forward over the next months and years, began plotting a new campaign of terror. In early 1996, after 3 years of relative calm, Israel was rocked by a series of deadly suicide bombings. February 25th, Jerusalem's central bus station, 27 dead. March 3rd, Jaffa Street, Jerusalem, another bus bomb, 18 dead. March 4th, Tel Aviv, 13 killed in yet another suicide attack. Hamas trumpeted its involvement in the attacks. Israel responded with sweeping raids aimed at Hamas and all its linked organizations, Mosab Hassan's Islamic youth movement among them. Mosab Hassan soon found himself face to face with Israeli soldiers.
They put me in a small cell for about a couple of hours. After that, they bound me again and handcuff me, put the blinds on my eyes, put me in a jeep with 3 soldiers, hit me all the way from Beit El to Al-Maskubiya in Jerusalem, West Jerusalem.
Had you been involved in any planning? Did you have any knowledge of any attacks against Israelis in the months or years running up to that arrest?
Oh, no, not at all, but they had suspicions. Of course, like being the son of my father, they had some suspicions that I might know something.
This is Megiddo prison in northern Israel. It became Mosab Hassan's home for 18 months, beginning in the summer of 1996. Now, Islamic radicals typically only become more extreme, more hardened in their views after a stint in a place like this. But that is not what happened to Mosab Hassan.
One would think you go into prison and become far, far more radical in the face of all of that, far more committed to not just Islam, but to the cause of Hamas. But that's not what happened.
Yeah, definitely this is not what happened. I saw in Hamas, I saw in Islam as a solution for humanity, for my people.
So Hamas and Islam were the solution to the problems of the Palestinians, in your eyes?
In my eyes, definitely. This is how I saw it. I believed in it.
So what on earth happened in prison?
The answer when we come back.
Welcome back to Escape from Hamas. I'm Bill Hemmer. As what is being called all-out war unfolds in the Gaza Strip this week, many people around the world cannot understand why this turmoil in the Middle East is so intractable, why the peoples of the region can't simply live in peace. Even many of us who have covered wars in the region have the same difficulty comprehending all of it. Maybe it's because most of us can only get so close to the conflict and, in effect, only so close to the main perpetrators of the violence. Mosab Hassan, the son of a leading Hamas founder, grew up in this all-too-violent world, and he believed that only Islam and Hamas would save the Palestinian people. But as Jonathan Hunt reports, a stint in prison brought on a crisis of faith.
I spent about 3 months in Israeli cells, like by myself most of the time, like small cell. I saw the sun once, like during that time, about 90 days.
Mosab Hassan went into his cell a radical Palestinian Muslim, head of the Islamic youth movement, proud son of a leader of Hamas. But here in prison, he says, he began to see a different face of the organizations he and his father served.
In any Israeli jail, Hamas has a mini government inside that jail. And they're very, very organized.
So they could organize, they could plan, they could plot.
If they torture, you're not allowed to say anything. If they kill people, you're not allowed to say anything. If
Wait,
they teach you
say
something wrong...
They torture and they kill people in the jail?
They tortured and they killed people.
Their
in
own
the jail.
people?
Their own people.
Why would Hamas torture and kill its own members? Because Mosab Hassan says Hamas leaders feared that anyone and everyone could be collaborating with Israel.
Hamas started to get suspicious about everybody, about themselves, about their wives, about their children, about everybody.
So everybody was guilty until proven innocent?
Exactly. Their method was to gather, they call them red points, on XY person. For example, like if someone spends 5 minutes later than he's supposed to spend in a shower, they think that he's communicating with the Israelis. They're just like collecting points.
And at some point, this person would get enough points against him.
And then the people he once saw as heroes would begin to torture. It was primitive and brutal.
They like put needles under their fingernails.
They put needles under the fingernails?
Needles under their fingernails. They didn't allow them to sleep for weeks continuously. They just like keep waking them up, put them in a very difficult positions, burning their bodies by like burning like piece of plastic on their bodies.
He is not right.
Sheikh Hamid Batawi is a leading Hamas official and Islamic court judge. He too spent time in Megiddo prison, and his response to allegations of Hamas torturing and murdering their own is unequivocal.
إطلاقاً غير صحيح. إطلاقاً.
Definitely not true. Definitely. If a prisoner makes a mistake, we use him as an example. Make him clean more. That's the regular punishment.
إطلاقاً.
So the worst thing that Hamas makes other Hamas members do in the jail is clean more.
قطعاً.
Definitely yes.
So Mosab Hassan, when he says Hamas members were tortured inside Megiddo prison, is lying?
مع احترامنا له قطعاً كذب.
With all respect to him, Of course he is a liar, 100%.
Mosab Hassan insists torture happened, but says he never had to worry about it for two reasons. First, his father's leadership position in Hamas, and second, because his uncle, another leading Hamas figure named Ibrahim Abu Salem, was in the same jail at the same time.
He was one of the top leaders of Hamas leadership in the jail during that time.
Abu Salem looked after his nephew, making sure Mosab Hassan was treated well. But as a high-ranking Hamas official, Abu Salem was, according to Mosab Hassan, incredibly cruel to others.
So your uncle, Ibrahim Abu Salem, was approving torture?
Yes.
That must have been staggering to you, to realize that.
I basically start to lose faith because of this person, like at that time.
Because of your own uncle?
Because of my own uncle and the other Hamas leaders.
And Mosab Hassan says he saw that the organization of Hamas inside the prisons mirrored its organization outside. Acts of violence do not occur without approval of senior political leadership, whether it be Mosab's father, his uncle, or Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh.
Doesn't happen without their knowledge for sure. Haniyeh, my father, everybody in Hamas leadership responsible for any decision that Hamas makes.
So the political wing, including your father, including Prime Minister Haniyeh, may not be the people strapping on a suicide belt, but they are as responsible for that suicide attack.
They are responsible.
And that's what makes Hamas so dangerous, says Mosab Hassan. Whether in the West Bank, Gaza, or here in Megiddo prison, it is committed to a radical ideology that puts little value on human life.
This type of movements, it's not about one person. It's not about one crazy person who's making all those decisions.
Will Hamas ever change? Will it ever be an organization that truly seeks peace with Israel?
No way. There is no chance.
Why not?
Because of Islam, because of their ideology.
Mosab Hassan now describes that ideology in startling terms. That's next.
Welcome back. St. Paul's conversion on the road to Damascus is one of the central stories of Christianity. As Jonathan Hunt discovered, Mosab Hassan found Christianity on a narrow cobblestone Jerusalem street.
With his faith in Hamas and Islam shattered by his prison experience, Mosab Hassan was a lost soul. But a rare visit here to Jerusalem changed his life. He was approached by a young man, a Christian tourist on the street, who invited him to come and read the Bible. Mosab Hassan says that moment changed everything for him, transforming him from an Islamic radical into a Christian soldier, and launching him on a journey that he believes will lead millions of Muslims into what he sees as the light.
This guy just walking the street down the street, inviting people to Bible talk, Bible study. I understood that he is inviting me to something related to Christianity. I accept the invitation. I went there. I started to read the Bible.
And for Mosab Hassan, one biblical phrase changed his life.
Love your enemy.
A young man whose father had been arrested multiple times by the Israelis, who had thrown stones at Israeli tanks, who had seen people dying on a daily basis, read Love Thine Enemy, and that changed your life.
I never heard this before. Nobody taught me this before.
It was a profound moment for Mosab Hassan, but not the proverbial thunderclap. Not a call to conversion, more an awakening. For a young man brought up in a deeply spiritual family, strictly Islamic, turning his back on his faith because of one reading of the Bible was simply not possible.
I couldn't move with my Christian faith before I solved my problem with Islam.
So you had to test your religion?
Test my religion in secret, very carefully. Very carefully. It took me a long time to do this.
Restudying Islam?
Restudying Islam from different point of view, not relying on people from the West, not relying on Christians, just relying on myself.
The year was 2000. Mosab Hassan was spending many days in these hills around Ramallah, secretly studying the Bible and the Quran side by side. It was a difficult time for a young man struggling with a crisis of faith.
I had like a mental conflict every day. It was an impossible situation.
In studying the Quran, Mosab Hassan found what he calls thousands of inconsistencies.
What Muslim sheikhs or religious people do, that they focus on only one part of Islam.
Which part do they focus on?
The part that they need for that time. If it's a war zone, if it's wartime, they're talking about jihad. If it's our relationship to Christianity and we have to coexist with them, live with them in peace, they bring verses talking about peace. If they have to fight Christians, they bring the verses that... So it's like very political religion. And this way, I discovered that Islam is the most bipolar religion on earth, that you can find whatever you want.
So the Quran contradicts itself?
In so many ways.
Mosab Hassan was now finally ready to accept that his future was as a Christian. But given his life up until now, given his father's position in Hamas, that would have to remain a secret, known only to him and a handful of Christian friends. For months that became years, he would walk the hills of the Holy Land, seeking out places to study and pray, secretly and safely.
It's very challenging and it's very dangerous, yes.
I walked those same hills with one of Mosab Hassan's Christian friends, a friend who spent many days studying with Mosab and who is still too afraid to be identified.
It's the toughest situation that I face through my life, to my Christianity life. So it was safer to go with him and meditate and worship the Lord just so secretly, because we know that the tension that has in the religions here in Jerusalem or Ramallah, it's very tough. It's very tough, especially between Muslim and Christian.
For Mosab Hassan, it was increasingly clear he couldn't stay in the land where he was born. He had difficult decisions to make.
Your life would have been easier had you never picked up the Bible.
Of course. Just like to stay in my, under my drug, the Islam. It's the Islam, you're under the drug. Now I have my own responsibilities. And now I see that this path is the right path.
This is talk that does not deserve a response.
Sheikh Hamid Batawi, the Hamas official and Islamic court judge, says Mosab Hassan's view of Islam is wrong and offensive.
Islam is a true religion with 1.5 billion believers. We challenge the world to find anything that is not right in the Holy Quran. And if Mosab said these things, he maybe was drunk, made so by your people in the US, or he was threatening or was giving dollars and shekels to say this.
But Mosab Hassan stands by his powerful, jarring words.
You've said that Islam is magic. Islam is a drug. The Quran is not the word of God. Those are incredibly incendiary words.
I know that. But it's the truth. It's the truth.
Mosab Hassan, of course, was no stranger to the brutality of Hamas and of radical Islam. He knew that once he spoke out, he'd be a target. He knew, too, that he had to get out of the West Bank, out of the Middle East. His journey to the US when we come back, plus the death sentence that has followed him here.
Welcome back to the conclusion of our story, Escape from Hamas. As you have seen, Mosab Hassan came to embrace a new faith on the mountain trails near his home in the West Bank. But like many early Christians, he knew that his life was at stake if his conversion was discovered. So he fled to the new promised land. Once again, Jonathan Hunt.
Mosab Hassan says his life had become almost intolerable. He was becoming increasingly committed to the Christian faith, just as the West Bank and Gaza were becoming more radically Islamic, with Hamas winning political power and exerting moral authority. And how would those radicals react to one of their own turning his back on his faith, especially when that one was the son of Sheikh Hassan Yousef, a founder not just of Hamas, but of the Muslim Brotherhood in the West Bank, a man respected and admired across the Palestinian territories. Mosab Hassan, having seen up close the way Hamas dealt with those it considered traitors here in Gaza, in the West Bank and in Israeli prisons, was not about to wait to find out. For the sake of his life, he knew he had to get out of the Middle East altogether, leaving behind his family and everything he knew and loved.
How did you feel when you landed on American soil?
Fear and happiness at the same time.
Mosab Hassan traveled to San Diego to join Christian friends he had first met in Jerusalem. He joined their evangelical church, Barabbas Road, and found in his new faith and his new country a sense of serenity and security.
I can go to my church easily. I'm protected for my opinions. So this is, I couldn't get this back there.
And finally, with those newfound feelings of freedom, Mosab Hassan was ready to fully embrace his new faith, to take the plunge, literally. With his church friends by his side, he was baptized in the Pacific Ocean off of San Diego. You may be wondering how in the world a Palestinian with Mosab's background was allowed into the United States. So were we. Mosab says he simply applied for a US visitor visa and it was granted. Did his application raise any red flags with US immigration or Homeland Security authorities? We don't know. One thing that is unusual, Mosab, who is now applying for political asylum, has already been given authorization to work here. That said, Mosab told us he is not working and is living off the generosity of members of his church. He says he sleeps on the floor of one of the members' homes. This much is certain. A source with Mosab's knowledge of Hamas would be of value to the American anti-terror effort. And Mosab did tell us off camera that the FBI has in fact contacted him, but he would give us no detail, only saying there is more to come. That was more than we heard from FBI sources, who simply told us they believed Mosab was who he said he was.
Turn with me to 2 Peter 1:21.
And what about his conversion to Christianity? After interviewing Mosab several times over several months and talking with people in the Mideast and here who know him, it is hard to believe his faith is not sincere.
We love you, Lord. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
I have my family, it's my church. Those are my people, they love me.
And now that he's here in the United States, Mosab Hassan feels free to speak his mind, to take on Islam, to urge the entire Muslim world to take a long, hard look at itself and the faith on which it is founded.
I think if they allow themselves to listen to this Quran and believe in the same time that this is from God, I think they are sick and they need help.
You sit here and say things like that, you are going to make millions, millions upon millions of Muslims very, very angry.
I'm not trying to offend Muslims. I love them. Those Muslims are my family.
But you are going to offend people and you are going to put your life in danger, aren't you, by doing this?
Some of them will be offended. Some of them will be offended. But I am sure, I believe that many of them will wake up.
Some of them will try to kill you.
They will. They will. If they will kill me, they will kill this body. But the question, what about my soul? What about my ideas? What about my beliefs that I shared with everybody? Will they be able to kill this? I don't think so.
A Fox News exclusive now, an inspiring story of a young man who saw bad things happening and decided to take a stand.
After we broadcast Mosab Hassan's first interview with us on Fox News, it spread like wildfire across the internet and around the world. Within days, Al-Qaeda, the world's most notorious terrorist group, responded, issuing a lengthy statement criticizing Hamas for allowing this young man to convert to Christianity, and concluding by quoting the chilling words of Muhammad, "Whoever changes his religion, kill him."
Are you scared?
I don't want to die. And I don't want to pretend that I like to die. I love to live. I love to serve my Lord. But if this will be the challenging, and this is how I prove my faith, I ask God to give me patience to do it.
And Mosab Hassan says his family will likely also suffer.
How does that make you feel? Do you think you shouldn't have done this? You shouldn't have gone public?
No, I had to do this. I had to do this because it's going to change so many people's lives. Hopefully, my family's life.
You believe your father will one day become a Christian?
He's not too far from Christianity. He's very close. I told him that. I told him you're very far of Islam and you're very close to Christianity. That was my last sentence to him.
How do you think he reacted to that?
He cried.
Tears of joy or despair?
I don't think it was joy at that moment. One day he will understand.
So for now, Mosab Hassan is separated spiritually and physically from the family he loves. He is making a new life in a Christian community. He has asked for asylum here in the US, a legal process that is ongoing. And he is settling in a part of the United States many consider paradise itself. So does he feel at home?
You're effectively homeless. You're depending on the charity of others. Your family back home is in tears. How do you cope with all of that?
It's a low price for Jesus. It's even nothing. It's like comparing to what he has done to us, it's nothing. For me, sand is sand, water is water, people are people everywhere. It's all the same. Your paradise is in here, and your hell as well.
Mosab Hassan grew up a man of faith and remains a man of faith, but that faith has changed, and now he is devoting his life to bringing Muslims, my people as he describes them, along with him on this journey. He wants to reach out through a book, through lectures, through any means he can. It is his duty, he believes, to change the world. It is a mission, he says, from God.
That's our program. I'm Bill Hemmer. And for more information, log on to foxnews.com, and while you're online, send me an email. I'd like to know what you think. The address, fncspecials@foxnews.com. And for all of us here at Fox, thanks for watching.